Liam Lawson is one of the stars that's slowly but surely starting to fade now that the silly season has started to take a full swing. Although his 5-race stint as Ricciardo's replacement back in 2023 was more than enough to prove to everyone in the F1 world that he can do exactly what is being asked of him, the harsh environment of Red Bull is very unlikely to provide him with a seat from 2025 onwards. But with other options available, can Lawson prove the Austrian team that they are utterly wrong here? And if so, which team has the best chances of signing him if they want to have the Kiwi on their team? It goes without saying that the biggest disappointment in the current silly season is Liam Lawson, and to make things worse, nothing that is happening is through a fault of his own. Maybe trusting Helmut Marko and Christian Horner's word a bit too much might have been on his own account, but other than that he did exactly what was asked of him and is still very unlikely to have a seat from 2025 onwards. The situation with the current duo of the Racing Bulls drivers is looking very promising, and for the first time in quite a while, the team is likely to extend the contract of a driver who is underperforming utterly compared to expectations. Ricciardo has managed to gather 5 points in his 2024 career, all of them from the P4 sprint finish in Miami, and is having one of the worst points comparisons to his teammate. Yuki Tsunoda sits in 3rd place when it comes to having the biggest percentage of the team's points scored in 2024 at 79%, and the only 2 drivers ahead of him are Albon and Hülkenberg. To top that off, Tsunoda is scoring points in a regular manner and is proving that the team has what it takes to fight in the midfield, potentially taking down Aston Martin from P5 in the Constructors' Championship, as the points difference currently stands at only 20 points. But in order for that to happen, they need 2 very competitive drivers, and it seems like they have just one. Yes, the chassis change in China did seem to work wonders for Ricciardo, as he found a lot of pace in Miami. However, the Aussie is still not nearly as close as Tsunoda, and considering the fact that Red Bull and their sister team do not have a lot of patience for underperforming drivers, this comes as a huge surprise to the entire F1 world. It was long believed that Liam Lawson would have a proper shot at the Racing Bulls seat because it wasn't a rumour or speculation in the first place. It was something that both Helmut Marko and Christian Horner said when they continued the contract of Ricciardo back in 2023. A couple of months and a lot of simulators worked later, it seems like the narrative in the Austrian team has changed and they're not willing to let Lawson have a shot in F1. When talking about the future of Lawson, Horner went on to say, "Now obviously waiting in the wings is a driver with the talent of Liam Lawson, who naturally is champing at the bit to get an opportunity, but there's nothing preset or preordained as to when or even if that would take place. The priority is for sure for the drivers that are in the race seats at the moment, and we'll see how that pans out." This comes as a huge disappointment to the true F1 fans, because whether we like it or not, Ricciardo's form has been declining, and if he doesn't manage to find more pace in 2024, then his team would effectively be a one-man show that will cheer every P8 to P10 finish from Tsunoda, who is also under a huge threat to leave the team due to the fact that he might not receive a proper shot in Red Bull's senior team. Obviously, with Perez's renewal of the contract, it became evident that Red Bull knows where their future lies, and the last thing they want is a driver that can be a realistic threat for Verstappen next to him in the garage. So they decided to put the Constructors' Championship at risk in order to have a proper shot at keeping the Drivers' Championship safe. Lawson has threatened in the past that if Red Bull does not provide him with a proper seat in the Racing Bulls, he will look into other teams' options and whether or not there will be a squad that will be willing to take over his services. When talking about this matter to a greater extent, Lawson said, "Obviously for me, the team is to drive with Red Bull, and I've been with them now for more than 5 years. They are the most competitive team in Formula 1 right now, so if I were to choose, I would drive for them. But my dream is to be in Formula 1, and if I can't be with them, then obviously I need to try and make that happen with someone else." Paradoxically enough, the silence in the paddock when it comes to Lawson's future is deafening, and a huge part of this lies in the financial background of Liam. He does not have the big bucks to enter the sport or to at least attract a lot of sponsorships, which is the primary reason why Ricciardo is still being kept at Racing Bulls. Maybe the older Aussie is not bringing big points, but his experience, charisma, and most importantly recognizable market value are what gave him a proper opportunity to keep fighting in the F1 world, despite his form not being nearly where it was a couple of years ago in Renault. Regardless, to say that he will be kept in the team at any cost is definitely a far-fetched scenario, despite Red Bull's recent actions being questionable to say the least when it comes to re-signing Perez and wanting to continue the collaboration with Ricciardo. Again, this shows the cruel reality of the F1 world in which a declining driver has a better opportunity to secure a seat in a team that serves as a breeding ground for Red Bull talent, compared to a prime example of young talent that needs to be developed into the next great thing for Red Bull. Unfortunately for Lawson, and for any young gun out there, this position will be taken for the next 10 years to say the least, as there's no need to risk anything as long as Verstappen is racing with them. There is always the opportunity to hope that we might jump ship earlier if something goes utterly wrong in Red Bull, or that he won't extend his contract beyond 2028, but at this point, that is pure living on hopium and nothing more. Another bit of bad news for Lawson is that this year, or more precisely in the current silly season that we are experiencing, the market is very competitive. There are a couple of seats available, such as the ones in Haas and Williams. However, it seems like both of these teams are ready to go in a different direction. The American squad needs an experienced driver if they are to sign Oliver Behrman as a replacement for Hülkenberg, so obviously someone like Ocon sits high on their list. As for Williams, they do have their own academy of drivers that they have to take care of. But even if they don't, the close relationship with Mercedes might land them an opportunity to work it out with Kimi Antonelli, who, if proven to be the next big thing in Formula 1, will be more than useful for the Grove-based squad in the mission to return them to the midfield. Currently, Liam Lawson's position is clear. He is the reserve driver at Red Bull, and although the hype around him has simmered down after the amazing 5-race stint he's driven for AlphaTauri, in which at one point he was the highest finishing driver for the team in Singapore at P9, he is very proactive in the team's activities. It was thanks to his and Sebastian Buemi's efforts that Red Bull managed to turn their car around in Imola after noticing a lot of imperfections during the first practice session, as the never-ending simulator work is what keeps him at bay and in touch with the real F1 world. When talking about this to a greater extent, Lawson said, "It's fair to say I've done a few roundabouts in my time. Sim racing is something I do 3 or 4 times a week. It does show a pretty good insight into what real F1 racing is like, and I think there's definitely going to be more drivers coming in from esports into F1. Be that as it may, Liam is now facing some tough challenges in his career, and it seems like he's pretty much out of options when it comes to finding an F1 seat from 2025 onwards. Again, this showed the cruel reality of being a reserve or academy driver in Red Bull, and whether he likes it or not, it's something that he might have anticipated before the beginning of the entire storm, when there was a slight opportunity for him to sign in Williams and replace Sargent. This is when Christian Horner stepped in and said that there's no need for Lawson to negotiate with other teams for a 1-year stint, as there are bigger plans from the Austrian team for 2025 and beyond, which is now slowly but surely turning into a big white lie from the 50-year-old team principal. With this in mind, where do you think Lawson would end in 2025? And more importantly, do you think that there's a chance he will drive in the sport anytime soon? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.